All right. The date, September 26th, 1926. The time, well, it wasn't Monday Night Football, I can tell you that much. It was by 1, 2 o'clock in the afternoon. The Giants in the 1925 season played their games at 2:30, and when they played at home in the Polo Grounds, they played at 2:30 in the afternoon. So the time was 1, 2 o'clock in the afternoon. The place was the East Hartford Velodrome. Oh yeah, the teams, the New York Giants at the Hartford Blues, not the St. Louis Blues or the Hartford Whalers, the Hartford Blues. This is the first game of the season for the New York Giants, and also, I do believe the first game of the season for the Hartford Blues as well too. The let's see, both teams, the Giants and the Hartford Blues, both played an exhibition game prior to this. So this was on Sunday. All right, Sunday, September 26th. So the week before, on Sunday, September 19th, the Hartford Blues played the dreaded Brooklyn Naval Hospital. Oh, yeah. Word to your mother. I wouldn't lie. And they would prevail 33-7. The Brooklyn Naval Hospital. Okay, they had their own football team. All right. Then the week before this, the Giants played the Trenton Athletic Association and would win 12-0. I'm going to do a video on that. I'm trying to get some information on that. There's not much known or not much I'm finding like through newspaper articles or anything like that. It wasn't a big thing back then, unless it was like Red Grange was huge back then, and the Bears or something. If they put on an exhibition game or something, there was media there. There was attention. The Giants. Let's see here. There we go. Next season. They played in, like I said, the Trenton Athletic Association in Trenton, New Jersey, at the Trenton High School field, and they won 12-0. So there wasn't a lot of, I guess, media or attention for that game so much. So I'm trying to get a little bit of information on that. I'll do a video on that. But so each team basically played a preseason game, exhibition game before this. So this was the first game of the season for both teams. Now, the Hartford Blues, they were just around for 4 seasons. And in 1926, well, they were around 24 and 25. There's a little story I'm going to go over and read over. 24 and 25, they were like an independent team. They were a very good independent team. The records were very, very good. They got invited to join the NFL in 1926. And 1926 was their only season in the NFL. And then in 1927, well, basically they became an independent team once again, had a very good record, and they were kind of like disbanded after that. The NFL in 1925, the first year for the Giants, there was 20 teams. I have to go back and look. I think it's the first 8, 9. Please forgive me. Every year, the Giants started in 1925. From 25 to 1933 or 34, whatever it was, every year there was a different amount of teams. Just real fast, 1925, there was 20 teams. 1926, it went up to 22 teams. 1927, the year the Giants won their first championship, they went down to 12 teams. They started cutting out a lot of there was a lot of teams only played 3 games or 4 games. Teams like the Hartford Blues here didn't draw well. Hartford Blues here, they had some very, very bad attendance here. They wound up the season 3-7. They wound up in 13th place at 3-7. They played almost all their games at the East Hartford Velodrome. Now, basically, shall we say, any stadium that ends with a drome, basically it's a bicycle rink. Okay. Meaning it's like a long, oblong, and basically can barely fit a football field in it. It's like, the straightaways would be flat, but then in it's like, I guess like NASCAR, around the bends, it would bank, right? So it was long, oblong. It basically was barely enough that you could fit a football field in there. But it is, interestingly enough, the Giants started their 1925 season on the road in a bicycle stadium. They played the Providence Steamroller in Providence, Rhode Island, and it was in the Cyclodrome. And the interesting thing about that, and I'm not sure if it's the same thing here with this stadium that they're playing in. I'm going to say today, this video is about. Interesting thing with the Cyclodrome was the way the track was laid out. The length of it was fine. There was no problem with the length of it or the width. Problem is that when it came to the bends, it cut off part of the end zone. So, like, I think if I remember correctly, like the very corners of the end zone, or like where the sidelines are at the end zone, some of them were only like maybe 5-6 yards deep because the track was coming in on such a on an angle, right, and going to the straightaway. So I'm not sure if it was both end zones or not, but I know at least one of the end zones, like the corners were cut off because of the track. Gotta love it, right? But it's the same thing here. So the Giants, the 1925 season opened up in a Drome Stadium, and 1926 they opened up in a Drome Stadium. Now let's see here. This is the dreaded East Hartford Velodrome. The East Hartford Velodrome was a velodrome in East Hartford, Connecticut. All right, there you go. And it was odd because it only lasted 3 seasons. They spent $75,000 to build it, which back then is a lot of money. I don't know what it comes out today, but $75,000 to build a race, bicycle stadium, bicycle track. And then 3 seasons later, it was demolished in 1929. Its 3-year lifespan, it hosted football and boxing events before it was demolished in 1929. The Hartford Blues played there in 1926 and 1927 seasons at the Velodrome, and then a new bicycle track located across the Connecticut River in East Hartford. The grass football field barely fit inside the wooden track. Its capacity was 8,000 spectators. The Velodrome was the home for the National Football League Hartford Blues for their 26 and 27 season. Boxing, the Velodrome has hosted many boxing events. One event was main event by Connecticut's own Christopher Battagliano, whoever that is, when he defeated Archie Rosenberg by a knockout. Ooh. So this stadium, barely, once again, the football field barely fit inside the track. And it only held, like it says here, 8,000 people. Now at this particular game, there was only 6,500 people at the stadium. And one of the problems that the Hartford Blues had was they had bad attendance. Now we look at the 26 season, they played 10 games. All right, let's see here. Every game, they played 2 games on the road. They played the Frankfurt Yellow Jackets in Philadelphia, and then they played the Brooklyn Lions in New York. Other than that, the thing was they played the Frankfurt Yellow Jackets. The Hartford Blues played the Frankfurt Yellow Jackets. Actually, it was the week after they played the Giants here. It was the following Saturday they played the Giants in Philadelphia at Frankfurt Stadium. They're playing these other teams at a stadium where they can hold more people. And then the other game that they wound up playing on the road was they played the Brooklyn Lions. Nope. Yeah. On October 10th, they played the Brooklyn Lions in Ebbets Field, where it was a baseball field. Stadium, big, hold a lot of people. This Dome Stadium doesn't hold much. And one of the problems is that, like in 1925, just learning this as you go along, like the visiting team that comes in, they're guaranteed so much money, right? So it's basically like the Giants come as, you sign a deal or whatever, I don't know if it happened all the time, but I do know it seemed like most of the time the visiting team would show up and they're guaranteed like $2,500. Now, of course, it doesn't sound like a lot, but if they have, I think if they had like 18 players, I think in 18 or 20 players were on a team. So if each player was making 50, maybe $100, they might have to pay out, $1,000, maybe $1,500 to their players. That will leave $1,000 left over. Of course, there's some traveling back and, for the team and all that stuff. I'm saying maybe the owner might make a couple $100, which obviously back then wasn't that bad. But the thing is that if you're the home team, you got to like rent out like the Giants, they're playing in the Polo Grounds. You got to pay to rent out the Polo Grounds. You got to pay your players, right? Whatever. I have to stay, the people, your coaches, right? You have to pay the visiting team that comes in. So you got to get some people and some paying customers in the stands or you're going to lose money. And just this one site that I have here, I'm just looking at some of the games. I mean, this game here with the Giants drew 6,500 people, which I guess would not be bad. But there was another game here that they played against the Brooklyn Lions. The Hartford Blues played the Brooklyn Lions on October 24th, 1926 at the East Hartford Velodrome. They drew 1,000 people. The following week, on October 31st, Halloween, they played the Hartford Blues hosted the Kansas City Cowboys. They lost 7-2. Some of these scores I love. They're so low scoring. It's amazing. But there was only 500 people there. The following week, they played the Canton Bulldogs, who always seem to be a decent draw. And they drew 4,000 people. So, I mean, one of the problems is that they may not have been around was because they couldn't draw. They couldn't afford to pay players. And, after a while, you just start losing so much money, you go under. Now, like the season before 1925, Tim Mara, the owner of the Giants, let's see, they played 12 games. So after the first 10 games of the season, right, there's the New York Giants, right? New York, you're in New York. Polo Grounds, huge stadium where the New York Giants baseball team played, huge stadium. After the first 10 games of the season, he was $40,000 in debt. Now, you go back to 1925, $40,000. That's a lot of debt. Thankfully, and I did a video on this, and it says down at the bottom, the game that possibly saved the Giants, which was the 11th game of the season. The Giants hosted the Bears and Red Grange, and the place was sold. It was packed. More standing room only. People were getting away in there, and it was standing, and the place was freaking packed just to see Red Grange. It wasn't the Bears, it was Red Grange. The man was like Jesus Christ, Michael Jackson, Michael Jordan, Babe Ruth, like all raw. He was unbelievable. And it might have been the game that might quite possibly have saved the Giants, because I believe, the tickets, I think they made like over $100,000 with the tickets. Red Grange got some of that. Red Grange made a lot of money in 1925 playing a few games for the Bears. But, there was enough money that got left over that it wiped out the $40,000 debt that Tim Mara had, and he made a little bit of money. Then the Giants played one more game. The following week, they went to Chicago and they played the Bears in Wrigley Field. They would they would beat the Bears, and they would probably make a little bit of money there. So at the end of the season, Tim Mara, actually probably came out on top a little bit. But I said, but after the first 10 games, he was $40,000 in debt. And, if he didn't make any money those final couple games, who knows? I mean, Tim, he's going to be like, well, I lost $50,000 last year. Okay, so we're here for a new season. What's going to happen this season? I mean, what do you think? Oh, well, I lost 50 grand last year. What's going to happen? I'm going to make 50 grand. Am I going to lose 50 grand? So quite possibly, I don't know, who knows? I mean, the Giants might have had to fold up because you had to get those paying customers in there, and that was one of the big problems back then. A lot of those teams just folded up. Now, as I said, interestingly enough, the Hartford Blues, they played almost all their games at home in this small stadium, and basically other teams that came, they were guaranteed so much money. So I really don't know how they stayed in business, but they were in business for 4 seasons. Now I got this little article here I'd like to read here. Kind of goes a little bit of the history of the. It says when the NFL played in Connecticut, the Hartford Blues. They were also named. They were all went by another name as well too here. In its early freewheeling years during the 1920s, the National Football League primarily located teams in small and medium-sized cities: Toledo, Akron, Providence, and Decatur, which was in Illinois, and they were the Decatur Staleys, and in 1920, and then in 1922 they became the Chicago Bears. They all hosted NFL franchises during those years with varying success. For one season, Hartford, too, played host to the NFL. It was a season racked with challenges. Now, the owner of the Hartford Blues was George Mulligan. 1924 sports promoter George Mulligan established the Waterbury Blues as an independent football team. After one season in the Brass City, they moved to Hartford. The NFL accepted just about any halfway organized football operation during this time, as long as the owner paid the league's entrance fee. And Mulligan signed Hartford up for the 1926 season. Now, they were a successful team their 4 seasons. In 1924, they were 7-2-4. These are independent teams. 1925, they were 10-2. 1926, they were coached by Jack Keogh. They were 3-7, but they were in the NFL. And in 1927, their final season, Vincent LaCava was their coach, and he coached them to a record of 7-1. And they kind of disbanded after that. Let's see. The Blues played their home games in the brand new Velodrome, a bicycle racing arena in East Hartford. After one exhibition game, which they played the Naval Hospital, the Brooklyn Naval Hospital, and they won 33-7. The Blues made their official NFL debut on September 26th, 1926, right, with many of the same players as the previous year. Playing before an estimated crowd of about 6,500 at the Velodrome, the Blues lost to the New York Giants 21-0. Let's see. This is a victory for Hartford Blues. After 3 more losses, the Blues won for the first time on October 24th by beating the Brooklyn Lions 16-6. That game also took place in the Velodrome, though attendance slipped down to 1,000 people. After a 5th defeat, the Blues won their second game on November 7th, again in the Velodrome, by a score of 16-7 over the Canton Bulldogs. The attendance for that game reached 4,500. Let's see. The Blues won for the 3rd time over the Dayton Triangles on November 21st by a score of 21-0. That win raised Hartford's record to 3-6 and proved to be their last victory of the season, and as it turned out, their NFL history. Heavy rain plagued the Blues on game days, keeping attendance down. And several times the rain became so severe in the Hartford area that officials canceled the games. Now, let's see here. Looks like on October 9th, 1926, the Hartford Blues were supposed to play the Columbus Tigers at the Velodrome, and the game was canceled. Then on October 17th, the Hartford Blues were hosting at the Velodrome. They're hosting the Providence Steamroller. That game got canceled. Then it looks like quite possibly on Saturday, December 4th, they hosted the Pottsville Maroons at the Velodrome. That game was canceled. So, they had at least 3 games. Actually, there was a 4th game. On December 5th, they played the Providence Steamroller in Providence, Rhode Island at the Providence Cyclodrome. And that game looked like it was canceled as well, too. So, they must have had some nasty rain in the 1926 fall, the fall of 1926. As the cold winter weather approached and with the team's poor performance dragging down local interest, attendance slid below 1,000 for each of the last 3 home games. 1,000. So if you look at, let's see here. They played, all right. Last 3 home games. Okay. They played on November 14th. They played the Buffalo Rangers, and I guess attendance was under 1,000. Then on November 21st, they played the Dayton Triangles, and attendance must have been at the Velodrome. Attendance must have been under 1,000. And their final game looks like at home in the NFL. The NFL season was against the Duluth Eskimos on November 27th at the Velodrome. And that game, I guess the attendance was under 1,000. Now, the following week, the following day, they played the All-New Britain team. The Hartford Blues on Sunday, November 28th, played the All-New Britain team at the Velodrome, and they had attendance of 6,000. But the thing was that the All-New Britain team was an independent team. They weren't part of the NFL. So basically between the Buffalo Rangers, the Dayton Triangles, and the Duluth Eskimos, those final 3 games that got played at the Velodrome, 1926 for the Hartford Blues, the attendance was all under 1,000. And you can't sustain a team that way with such poor attendance. You can't do it. All right, so let's see here. Mulligan canceled several home games scheduled for December. Mulligan paid most players on a per-game basis and apparently decided to save money by simply canceling games that did not figure to bring in enough revenue to cover the costs. So that made sense. On the plus side, the Blues saved on travel expenses by playing only 2 road games. Hartford's final NFL game was a 16-0 loss to the Duluth Eskimos in the Velodrome on November 27th. The Blues finished the season at 3-7. So I mean, they did save money, by not having to travel, but they also kept themselves confined, playing in a small arena. Some of the stadiums are much bigger. Like the Chicago Bears, the Chicago Cardinals, the New York Giants had big stadiums. You go there, maybe you make some money, but that is what it is. All right, then we got. Now the Hartford Blues, they had season tickets for this one season. It looked like you could get the same seat guaranteed for every game. It was $15. For the whole season. Federal tax was $1.50 and state tax was 75 cents. So for $17.25, you can have a season ticket for the 1926 season. It said displayed advertisement for the Hartford Blues football season tickets, a Hartford Current, September 25th, 1926. Well, actually, it's interesting, the Hartford Current. That's where I got an article. A big, nice article on this one game I'm going to go over in just a bit here. But all the chair seats were all $2.30. I guess anywhere you sat. So if you bought a season ticket, of course, you're $17.25, and you can same seat, and you can see every game. If you came individually, it was $2.30 for a seat. Let's see, NFL stars who played in Hartford. Other great greats who played against the Blues at the Velodrome were Ernie Nevers and Johnny Blood McNally of Duluth, Guy Chamberlain of the Frankfurt Yellow Jackets, and Pete Henry of Canton. The one and only Jim Thorpe, who was also on the Canton roster that year but unable to play in a game in Hartford because of injury. That's why I think when they played the Canton Bulldogs, I think that's why they had like 4,500 people there. They had a big crowd there. Like Owen, all became members of the Hall of Fame. Also of note was the appearance in Hartford of one of the 5 African Americans in the NFL in 1926, Saul Butler of Canton. In 1927, the NFL looked to reduce the number of teams in the league and voted to drop Hartford from its ranks. Mulligan subsequently renamed the team the Hartford Giants, and they posted a 7-1 record as an independent team in 1927 before disbanding. Now, interestingly enough, talking about Giants and the Connecticut area, interestingly enough, 1973, 1974, the New York Giants played their home games at the Yale Bowl in New Haven, while renovations took place at Yankee Stadium, which was their former home, and workers finished construction on Giant Stadium, which was their future home. The arrangement was strictly temporary, however, and all of the team's administrative offices remained in Manhattan. So nearly a century after their moment in the sun, the Hartford Blues remained the only NFL franchise ever truly to call Connecticut home, because the 1973 season, they were going to renovate Yankee Stadium. So the Giants moved out there, but the Giants had their eye on the prize. They had they were getting their own stadium built, Giant Stadium in New Jersey, which would open up in the beginning of 1976 season. But the Giants played in 2 different stadiums in 1973. 1973, their first 2 games of the season, they played at home. They played at Yankee Stadium. The first game of the season they beat the Houston Oilers, not the Tennessee Titans, not the Tennessee Oilers, the Houston Oilers. They won that game 34-14. The following week, they played the Philadelphia Eagles at home. So the final game the Giants ever played at Yankee Stadium, the home game at Yankee Stadium, was against the Philadelphia Eagles. It was the second week of the 1973 season. Pete Gogolak was running onto the field as time was expiring. The Giants were down 23-20, right? And they snapped the ball, got it down. He kicked it up. It was good. So the final game the Giants ever played at Yankee Stadium was a 23-23 tie against the Philadelphia Eagles. They had no more timeouts. Norm Snead hit Bob Tucker down like around the 10-yard line or so, but he was tackled inbounds. They had no timeouts left. I guess when he got tackled, there's maybe 15, 20 seconds left or so in the game. So the offense ran off the field, the kicking unit came on the field, and the clock was just running down. And basically, just before it ran out, they snapped the ball. As long as they got the snap off before the gun sounded. And so the final game of the season for the Giants in Yankee Stadium finals ever was a 23-23 tie against the Philadelphia Eagles. And they played their final 12 games, their final 5 home games, shall I say, at the 1973 season were at the Yale Bowl. 1974, all their 7 home games were at the Yale Bowl. 1975, they played at Shea Stadium, where they shared Shea Stadium with the Jets, like kind of how the Giants and Jets share stadium nowadays. Then in 1976, they opened up Giant Stadium. But the Hartford Blues are basically, what they said, basically the only true team, NFL team that ever, just for one season, actually, it's weird because the Hartford Blues, one season, the Giants were actually played 2 seasons in Connecticut, but it is what it is. As I said, so they disbanded after 4 seasons. They were a very good independent team. They were not such a good, shall we say, NFL team overall. I mean, because there was a lot of independent teams, lots of independent teams. Now, interestingly enough, they played 10 games. They had a lot of guys. They had like almost 40 guys play. I think they had 39 guys on their team, which is that's a lot of guys. The Giants had I counted. It was like Giants had in the 20s. Giants were 8-4-1. They played 13 games. They had let's see here. Oops. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 22, 24. Giants had 27 players. Played 13 games, had 27 players. Hartford played 10 games, had 37 players. So 27, 37. So that's, I said 39, 37. They had 37 players. It was that's a lot of players. Now, it's kind of interesting because just to kind of go to show you, they had 3 guys wear the same jersey, two different numbers. They had so many guys come and go. Let's see. They had number 23. They had 3 guys during the season wearing the number 23, the Hartford Blues. They had 3 guys. Okay. They had 3 guys wear the number 25. They had other guys like number 6 got wore by 2 guys. Number 3 got wore by 2 guys. Number 24 by 2 guys. 14 by 2 guys. 29 got wore by 2 guys. But numbers 23 and 25 got worn by 3 different players. I mean, they had a lot of guys that played like 1-2 games. But I mean, that's the way it was. It was like, and you know what it was? The kicker of it was it was the same jersey. So one guy, I guess at 25, I guess he took it off, right? And he said, and I guess he never played. Maybe he got injured or whatever it was, whatever the reason was. The guy never played ever again. That was the jersey, and they just washed it. They just gave the same jersey to the next guy came in. Oh my goodness! But the Giants in this season here in 1926, they would have a new coach. Actually, the Giants had 2 Alexanders on the team in 1926. They had John Alexander and they had Joe Doc Alexander. Joe Doc Alexander, who's the coach of the Giants in 1926, he also played for them in 1925. He was their center. Bob Folwell was the coach of the Giants in 1925. Now, what happened is why he's not the coach of the Giants in 1926 is because Red Grange, I'll try to keep this real short. Red Grange made a lot of money in playing for the Bears in the 1925 season. Toward the end of the season, he finished his career at Illinois, played some games with the Bears, made a lot of money, and him and his manager made a lot of money. So C.C. Pyle, Cash and Carry Pyle, wanted to get an NFL team, but he wanted it in New York City, big. I mean, because he wanted to play in Yankee Stadium, because he knew with Ray Grange he could sell the place out, he could make a ton of money, and for whatever he had to be in New York, he had to play in New York. Well, the problem was he was very, very stubborn. The thing was is that he had to get approval from Tamara. Because back then you're interfering on, it's not the way it is nowadays. If you're a Jet fan or a Giant, they don't care. The place is going to pretty much sell out no matter what. If the teams share the same state, it doesn't matter. But back then, like say if the Giants played a game on a Sunday and at the Polo Grounds and they wanted to play a game at Yankee Stadium basically the same day, they were very close in proximity to one another. So you're going to pretty much split up the amount of people. Some people would go here, some people would go there. So they were going to lose money. So Mr. Tim Mara, I believe he asked, I think he said, why don't you go play like in Ebbetsville, like in Brooklyn? That's far enough away. You can have those people there. And I got the Polo Ground area. So you got there and I got over here. He said, no, he said, I'm playing in Yankee Stadium, CNC Pyle, Cash and Carry Pyle, the manager of the of Red Grange. So what wound up happening, because he got told no, he couldn't have a team in the NFL, right, in 1926 to play in Yankee Stadium. He formed his own league. They made so much money in 1925 because of Red Grange, because people wanted to pay to see him, that they formed their own league. So he got a team, and he played in Yankee Stadium. It was the AFL. He formed the AFL, the first AFL. Now, what happened was he formed this new league. So to attract the best of the best, cost him some money. So what he did was he got Bob Foley. I mean, there was a lot of some of the players. He paid the commissioner, I think it was like $25,000 which was like 5 times the amount of money that the commissioner of the NFL made for the season. So he's paying, like, he's trying to get good players to come play for him. So some players did jump ship and play for that league. It only lasted 1 season, and then it folded because they lost so much money. But it also, he paid, he got good coaches. Now, Bob Folwell was a very, very good coach. So he paid Bob Folwell some extra money to come to the AFL and the coach. And, hey, you're going to pay me what? I don't know what he got paid. It was like, yeah, you're going to pay me double my salary or whatever, the coach. Yeah. So Bob Folwell was the coach of the Philadelphia Quakers. And he was so good that the Philadelphia Quakers, for this one season, 1926 of the AFL, they won the championship. So Bob Folwell is a very, very good coach. So he went from the Giants in 1925, jumped ship to the AFL in 1926, became the coach of the Philadelphia Quakers, and they won the championship. So that's why the Giants, they needed a new coach. So they got Joe Doc Alexander. Now, the problem with Joe Doc Alexander was that he was a doctor. And the very thing that gave him his nickname was also what actually, in the end, actually cost him his job at the end of the 1926 season, because the Giants, Tim Mara wanted more of a full-time coach, somebody who could be there. Basically what it was Doc Alexander was like during the day, morning and early afternoon, he was a doctor. He would come to practice 3, 4 o'clock in the afternoon, right? So sometimes he would come even later. So the Giants, after the 26th season, wanted a full-time coach, somebody that could spend more time with then they got the new coach would be Earl Pottinger. It's either P-O-T-T. It's either Pottinger or Pottinger. So he became the Giants coach in 1927 and 1928. But in 1926 season, the Giants got their second coach, new coach, Joe Doc Alexander. He was the Giants coach. The Giants had 2 Alexanders on the team. The other one was John Alexander. The interesting thing about John Alexander was John Alexander actually got 12 of his buddies and formed like a glorified scrimmage or whatever you want to call it, and actually became the first game that the New York Giants ever played against. John Alexander got 12 of his buddies and he formed the team called the Newark Red Jackets, and they played the game. It was on September 27th, 1925. They played it in Newark, Dreamland Park in Newark, New Jersey. And it was pretty much just like a glorified scrimmage. John Alexander got 12 of his buddies. They played against the Giants, and the Giants would win that game 3-0. So the Giants had 2 Alexanders on their team for the 1926 season. And so let me go over I got a couple articles here I want to check out. And now we'll go over the starting lineup, shall we? All right, so let's see. Now, a lot of these guys were with the Giants in the 1925 season as well. But we have his name was Tilly Voss. Oh yeah, Tilly. Word to your mother. He was the Giants' left end. John Alexander was the Giants' left tackle. Joe Doc Alexander was the Giants' left guard. Now, interestingly enough, Joe Doc Alexander was the Giants' center all last season. He was a center, I believe, at Syracuse. I think he was an All-American as well, too. At college, he was a very, very good center. But he was the Giants' center last season. But apparently, it seems like this season he was their guard. So Joe Doc Alexander played left guard. So at one tackle you had an Alexander. At the next guard you had that's like Andrew Thomas is had a Thomas, and then Zudu Josh instead of Josh Zudu, it was Josh Thomas, right? You had Thomas and Thomas. Well, here you had Alexander and Alexander next to each other. The Giants, Stevenson was their center. Murtaugh was their right guard. Steve Owen was the Giants' right tackle. Steve Owen, he's a story in himself. He would become the Giants' head coach full-time in 1931 to 1953. He also, I think, was help assist coach the final 2 games of the 1930 season. Actually, Benny Friedman was the interim coach. I think Steve Owen might have helped be the assistant coach, because Roy Andrews was let go with 2 games left to go in the 1930 season. And Benny Friedman was like, I believe, the interim coach. I think Steve Owen helped, was maybe assistant coach, but Steve Owen became the full-time coach in 1931. So 1931 and 1953, Steve Owen, for 23 seasons, he was the coach of the Giants. Is the longest tenured coach in Giants history, probably will be forever. 23 seasons. He has 152 career wins, and he has 2 championships. So Steve Owen with 2, Bill Parcells with 2, and Tom Coughlin with 2. So 6 of our 8 championships, right? All right. Then we got, let's see here. Bomar was the right end for the Giants. Hinkie Haynes scored the first 2 touchdowns in Giants history against the Cleveland Bulldogs, a 19-0 win. He ran one in and caught another one and ran it in as well. It was the 4th game of the 1925 season. Giants, the first Giants win ever, 19-0 against the Cleveland Bulldogs at the Polo Grounds. Hinkie Haynes, first 2 touchdowns in Giants history. Then we had Haggerty. He was the Giants' left halfback. Killinger was the right halfback, and McBride, he was the fullback. McBride was a very big force for the Giants in the 1925 season. Very, very, very big. There was a lot of turnover. I mean, guys would get injured or whatever. I mean, for tons of reasons. There's turnover nowadays. There was a lot of turnover back then too. A lot of turnover. And I said, because some of these guys are playing 60 minutes. You try to play a football game for 60 minutes. Back then, the guys are taking your knees out and all kinds of stuff. I mean, it's not like the rules that they have nowadays. Back then, it was probably almost like no holds barred, pretty much. And so I mean, some of these guys would get injured and quite possibly ruin their career, I guess. But so for the Hartford Blues, right, we have Weber was their left end. McCann was their left tackle. McCormick was their left guard. Gildia, looks like Gildia. I'll go with that. Was their center. Keenan was their right guard. Garvey was their right tackle. O'Connell was their right end. Foley was their quarterback. Hinkie Haynes was the Giants quarterback, by the way. Foley was the Hartford Blues quarterback. McElvoy. We'll go McElvoy. He was the left halfback. Thomas was the right halfback, and Barnaco was the fullback for the Hartford Blues. Now the Giants would wind up winning 21-0. So this article here I have is from the New York Times. It's September 27th, 1926. This is the date of the article. So the game got played the day before, September 26th. Now, interestingly enough, the New York Daily News, who has their own sports section, had nothing at all about the New York Giants. They had all kinds of other stuff in there. I mean, if you look at their article, I mean, if you look at, I mean, they had football scores of like a high school game. I mean, they had stuff about like soccer. They had all kinds of baseball scores in here. They had stuff about the bicycle racing. They had the aqueduct entries, based on horse racing. I mean, they said they had boxing. What else did they have in here? I mean, in the boxing, I mean, they had all kinds of stuff in here, but there was nothing. They talked about Yankees giggle away couple, the Browns. So the Yankees lost 2 games to the St. Louis Browns, 6-1 and 6-2. They lost a doubleheader, but there's nothing, absolutely nothing here at all. Talks about the New York Football Giants. Now, of course, times would change, and times would change big time. I mean, nowadays that won't happen ever again. I mean, but in the New York Daily News. But back then, it was interesting. After the Giants played their first game for the 1926 season, no indication of it all from the New York Daily News. However, the New York Times, which I'm going to read, at least had something. All right, so we got. All right, now this is interesting here, too. This goes to show you how some of the information is just like wrong. Okay. The Giants complete. Oh, okay. Can I read this here? Football Giants win at Hartford. They complete 7 passes, which net 96 yards and paved the way to a 21-0 victory. Now it says here, 20,000 people witnessed the struggle. Now that's impossible because the stadium only holds 8,000. And all the indications, everything else I'm reading, also including, I think, this other article from Connecticut, the Hartford Current, I think says 6,500 people. So somehow they came up with 20,000 people. No idea. So they're wrong there. It says the Blues penetrate New York defense for only 1 first down all game and permit the victors to get 10. So the Giants had 10 first downs, and the Hartford Blues had 1 first down. Oh, could you imagine how boring a game that would be? Watch your team get 1 first down all game. Holy cow. So in Hartford, Connecticut, the New York Football Giants made an auspicious start to the National Football Championship race this afternoon when the powerful Hartford Blues were defeated 21-0 before 20,000 fans at the new Velodrome, which only holds 8,000. So you tell me, where are they putting 20,000 people at? The victors made 10 first downs to their opponent's 1 and completed 7 forward passes, which netted 96 yards and paved the way for the decisive victory. The New York defense was so strong and alert that the Blues completed only 1 pass for 8 yards, and they had 1 first down. Both 11s were handicapped in the first period by a muddy field, which caused frequent fumbles. In the second period, however, the Giants' offense got underway, and a long march ended with Jack McBride, old Syracuse player, threw a pretty pass to Jack Haggerty, former Georgetown star, who raced 12 yards for a touchdown. McBride kicked the goal for the extra point. They kicked the goal for the extra point. In the third period, McBride plunged through the line for a touchdown and also kicked the goal. So the Giants scored 1 touchdown in the second quarter, and they scored 2 touchdowns in the third quarter. All right, let's see here. After an exchange of punts, now we're still in the third quarter here. All right, John Alexander, making his first appearance in a New York uniform, recovered a Hartford fumble behind its goal line for a touchdown, and Hogan kicked the goal. So that gave the Giants 21-0. 4 New York Giants were outstanding stars. Glenn Killinger, former All-American quarter at Penn State. Jack Haggerty, Georgetown halfback last year. Ranger Griggs, former Texas quarter. And Tilly Voss, a Giant end from Detroit. Jack McBride and Hinkie Haynes also stood out. The Jack McBride and Hinkie Haynes were last year were with the Giants. All right, so that's the New York Times version. All right, so now here what we have, this is the Hartford Current. Now this is a lot more thorough. So overhead gain leads to 2 scores. Overhead meaning basically passing. Voss, here they spell it wrong. They have V-O-S-E. His name is Tilly Voss, V-O-S-S. Here they have V-O-S-A, so they just spelled it wrong. So it says Voss and Bomar pulled down passes and run for touchdowns. McBride plunges through for another. Hartford fails to make, it says Hartford fails to make first down. But in the other article, it says they made 1 first down. So you go tell me, right? All right. Hartford Blues, a gathering of well-known collegiate players, learned yesterday that there is much to know about the game of professional football when they went down before the New York Giants in the opening game of the National League season at the Velodrome, 21-0. There it says, Giants take to the air. The Giants did only what was expected of them and what the Blues had been warned against: score through the air, and the sensational captures of the pigskin with the subsequent sprints by Stan Voss, that's Voss, and Lynn Bomar were a revelation. 2 of the Giants' touchdowns resulted from long and accurate passing, and during one march, they covered something like 65 yards. A penalty of 15 yards for rough work on the part of the Blues put the ball down a yard from their line, and Jack McBride punched his way through to the score. Another Giants touchdown followed a poor pass from Gildia, which Cowboy Dutch Weber preparing to punt from behind his own goal. Weber, who was the real star of the Blues while he remained in the contest, grasped for the oval but barely touched it, and John Alexander pounced upon the bounding ball behind the post. So now remember, the posts were on the goal line. They weren't on the end line, right? So just behind the post. So apparently they went to punt the ball. He tried to punt it. Basically, it looked like he barely touched it, it said. It was bouncing around in the end zone, and John Alexander pounced on it for a touchdown for the Giants. It says Blues offense was weak. Figures show only too well why the Blues went under. New York scored 10 first downs against none for Hartford. So I don't know. One article says one article says none. The Blues completed 2 of 10 forward passes. The other one said they completed 1 forward pass. The Giants completed 9 of 17. So the other article said they completed 7 passes. So here they said the Giants completed 9 of 17 passes. The Blues fumbled 5 times and the Giants fumbled 3 times. Only in the matter of recovery of fumbles did Hartford excel, retrieving 6 against the Giants 2. So Hartford recovered most of the fumbles, though, and they still lost 21-0. New York presented a powerful line and backfield that will compare with any in the professional ranks. Doc Alexander, the coach and center, played a smashing game throughout. Now, here it says center, but here they have him as being the right guard. So I said Doc Alexander plays center for the Giants last season. So he played a smashing game throughout. Ably assisted by Big Carney, formerly of Navy, John Alexander, Stan Voss, and Lynn Bomar. But this was along the line, and the performance that really interested the 6,500 spectators came from the Furious 4 behind the wall of Glenn Killinger, Jack Haggerty, Hinkie Haynes, and Jack McBride. So 6,500 people saw. Early in the contest, this quartet of stars, all of whom had featured the play of their team in college, handled the ball rather loosely, 3 fumbles being charged against them, 2 of which fell to the Blues. Thereafter, Hartford only finished the contest fighting hard to no avail against a much more powerful adversary, already steeped in the sweat of professional gridirons. The Giants have mighty line. The Blues failed to make a first down against the mighty line, which looks able to move about anything in the land. Shortly, McMahon, entering the contest in the second period, fumbled twice, but in the third quarter slipped through for an 8-yard gain, the best running effort shown by the local club. 8 yards, an 8-yard run for the Hartford Blues. Eddie McAvoy, and Shrimp Foley, fast men, were unable to get started at any stage, with the Giants forwards bursting through in droves. Weber did some excellent kicking in the first period, and his efforts, together with the Giants' fumbles, kept the ball in the visitors' territory. And while Weber was at the left wing, the Giants refused to try his end to any extent. But once the McBride, Haggerty, Bomar, Voss combination started the forward pass offensive, the Blues were all at sea. There were passes all around them, and Giants bobbed from nowhere to receive them. To both sides of the line and over the center they flew. 3 successful shots carried Haggerty across for the touchdown, and there was glee among the invading forces. For up that time, they had faced up better than a scoreless tie. All right. In trouble and start, Joe Alexander and his home players were in trouble at the start when they fumbled the kickoff. Whoops. And Weber fell on the ball at the Giants' 30-yard line. The Blues tried hard but could make no impression on the opposing forwards. And Barnaco's attempt at a placement goal went wide. So they tried a field goal, the Blues, but it went wide. Lining up 20 yards from the post, Killinger was nailed by Grattan O'Connell 10 yards behind after a bad pass from center. He then passed to Voss for a 10-yard advance, and McBride punted to McAvoy at midfield. Again, McAvoy and Barnaco smashed to the Giants' wall, and Weber got away his poorest play of the game, a kick that went offside at the Giants' 35-yard line. So they had a bad punt. Without attempting a run or pass, New Yorkers booted back to the Blues' 30-yard mark, and Weber kicked back to the 50. Haynes cut through center for 5. Gildia being hurt on the play, but returning to the battle. Haggerty annexed 2, and Haynes recorded a first down. An exchange of kicks found the Blues attacking from the Giants' 40-yard mark, and the ball remained in Giants territory for the remainder of the period. Haynes intercepts a pass. As the second quarter started, Hinkie Haynes intercepted a forward pass for the Giants in the 25-yard stripe, and Haggerty, after losing 5 when McCain broke through, booted 57 yards to McAvoy. Eddie made 3, Foley 5, and Ken Simendinger was sent in to do the punting. He sent a long shot down the field, which Hinkie Haynes finally captured 3 yards from the Giants' goal. McBride kicked 22 yards, and the Blues were penalized 15 for holding. They made a gallant try for a drop kick from 45 yards out, but it fell short. So the Blues tried a drop kick from 45 yards out, but that fell short. Then came the deluge. Haynes gained a yard at tackle and passed short to Bomar for a 10-yard advance. John Griggs, the mighty man from Texas, substituted for Killinger at this point and immediately passed to Tilly Voss to the Giants' 48. Griggs smashed the line for 9 yards, and McBride passed to Voss, the former end, dashing to the Blues' 30-yard mark. Haynes added 5 at right end, and McBride made it a first down. Then the first touchdown came with a pass from McBride to Haggerty. The half ended with the Giants leading 7-0. This is a very in-depth article. I mean, this is like, I got a little bit more left to read here, I think. Okay. Let's see. After 2 short gains, now we're in the second period. After 2 short gains, Griggs passed to Bomar, who escaped the Blues' 38-yard mark. A 15-yard penalty for rough play on the tackle took Hartford back to within a yard of its post, and McBride pushed across for the Giants' second touchdown, putting them up 14-0 in the third quarter. A long run by Grigg after the kickoff started the Giants again. The big Texan came back 25 yards to the 45-yard line, and after Haggerty had failed to gain, he kicked to the Blues' 25-yard where McAvoy was tackled offside, and the Giants received a 15-yard penalty. Interesting. The Cowboy kicked immediately, but Hogan made an exceptional boot on the return. McAvoy watched the ball while it rolled to his 5-yard mark. It was at this point that the Cowboy attempted to kick behind his goal line, and the bad pass permitted John Alexander to drop on the ball for a touchdown for the Giants, for their third touchdown. The Giants threatened in the final period, but neither team was able to get anywhere. Foley tried the passing game with disastrous results when Big Williams received a blue pass in his chest. So, I mean, this is from the Hartford Current. I mean, talking about a very well, in depth and almost every play goes almost play by play. So that was the first game of the 1926 season for the New York Giants, which turned out to be very, very successful. It happened to be the only time that they would wind up playing the Hartford Blues, and it was that was the first game of the Hartford Blues' first and only season in the NFL, which was 1926. So the Giants started this 1926 season off on a good note. They would finish 8-4-1, but still a very successful season for the Giants. But anyway, the Giants played their first game of the season, and they would win 21-0 over the Hartford Blues and start to see 1926 season off 1-0. So that's what happened on this date, September 26th, 1926, in New York football Giants history. See you next time.